Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I will not be my co-host will be here at some point. There's not here right now. But the title of today's episode is Escaping with a Dub, and the Burgundy Zone is a part of the Frederick Podcast Network. You can find out more by going to www.listenfrederick.com. And to be able to help me kind of digest whatever the heck I just witnessed, being our good friend of 1340 Fox AM, Mr. Felix Trammell. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday. Sir, how you doing?
I'm all right. I can't complain after a win. I don't complain after wins.
Yes. So my immediate question to you is, what was your feeling going into that 2-point conversion? Were you as kind of nervous as I was? And what was your reaction after?
Well, for me, the rule of thumb is always tie at home, go for two on the road.
Yeah.
And I felt like if the Saints did get the ball back, they would somehow win in overtime.
Right.
I didn't feel too comfortable with their 2-point conversion attempt, like what they were going to do there. So as always, you never know in the league, but I felt a little bit more confident in the Commanders' defense to make that 2-point conversion stop versus having to go to overtime and play in a full overtime, and you never know what happens there. So I kind of figured that Rizzi would go for it. That's kind of his MO. I still don't know why he started Haney over Spencer Rattler. I think that's a question for the Saints media to bomb out, because Haney didn't look like an NFL caliber quarterback, and Spencer Rattler did. Now, but that 2-point conversion, I think Quinn and Joe Witt kind of knew what was coming. And if you watch the play, you can see the cornerbacks know the play that's coming, and they defended it well.
Yeah, they did, and obviously they were all over it, and thankfully there wasn't a penalty on that play, which brings you to my next question to you, because Washington had 9 penalties for 84 yards, where the Saints only had 4 for 36. I know the first one, Dante Fowler, look, that's ticky-tack, that's here or there, but the second one was atrocious. What was with the penalties in this game, Felix? It definitely was a change in the kind of momentum.
I don't know. I'm kind of flabbergasted. I know what the league is doing, but if we as we saw in the first half, Jayden was having a masterful game, but he was also getting sacked. And there was a couple plays where he was getting hit. There was one with Cam Jordan where he was wrapped up, the whistle was blown, and Cam Jordan suplexed him. And me as a former football player, that's fine. But then you watch the Dante Fowler plays, and you're just like, what are we talking about here? I think that's a rule that really needs to be investigated. Because that first one, he grazes the helmet.
Yeah.
He grazes the helmet. So letter of the law, that's a penalty. I don't like it because it's not a full blow to the head, but whatever. The second one, he literally hits him in the rib cage and takes him down. I don't know any other way of tackling somebody than what Dante Fowler did right there. And those sort of things change up how a defense plays, because now you're more worried about getting that 15-yard flag than really blowing up the quarterback, because as you saw in the first half, they were blowing Haney up and nothing was called, which was rightly so. So I think the NFL has an issue with that because it's just so obviously bad. And at the end of the day, it's tackle football. We most of us know what a bad hit is, and that's what that penalty is designed to do. But the second one, I literally have no words for. It was one step and he hit him. It wasn't like he took 3 steps and lined him up. It was literally one step and he hits him. And at a certain point, quarterbacks are football players too, and they can be rewarded all of this protection. And they got a first down on the play, but it went from a first down at maybe the 17 to 20-yard line to the 35 and almost midfield. And the defense bows up, but that's a field goal they give up, which lends itself to have a one-possession game at the end. So, that's got to change. That's something that's got to become a focus. But the penalties just seem so one-sided, especially if you're watching them. They seemed one-sided. They called a hold on them on a punt, but you saw 3 people by Tressway and Tressway fall on the ground, and nothing was acknowledged about that. And in those plays, you're just like, Okay, the obvious ones you're not calling, and then you see stuff like that. And then even the Terry McLaurin deep shot, the last one, which was slightly underthrown, the DB clearly got there before the ball.
Yep.
That's a routine flag we see every single day, except apparently in New Orleans this afternoon. So I think some of those mistakes were you can kind of queue up to coming off the bye. You know, you got to get back in rhythm, get back in flow. But some of those you just got to shake your head at. Like Dante Fowler was smiling on the sideline because he's probably thinking, I don't know what else to do other than do what I just did. So I think, I mean, that's something you point out to the league office and say, hey, this is what he did. What is the penalty? Where's that? Start calling them out because that's the only way it's going to change,
Yeah,
especially with Hockley's crew.
yeah, especially like given the fact of especially with Dante Fowler's the second one, it's almost essentially telling him don't rush the quarterback, like don't even touch him, and that's the message that's being sent across. But on the flip side of it, offensively, Washington was good in the first half. They obviously went up 14-0 at halftime. They felt pretty good there. But Brian Robinson on the day, 21 carries for 65 yards, only averaged 3.1 on the ground. And then Jayden Daniels, you had already alluded to it, getting sacked 8 times. What was the issue today? It can't just be that Dieter was starting in there, but obviously he had a obviously was impacted there. But what happened up front today?
I think, I mean, Talabi Addish's role and responsibility in the offense can be understated.
Yep.
And if you notice, the snaps were kind of off at the beginning. You know, it kind of looked weird. The motion looked all like the Zacchaeus touchdown that was called back was more because the snap was delayed than Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus has a timer.
Right.
He's looking at a time, and then that snap's not there on time. So it adjusted a few things, like they couldn't run downhill up the middle. The Saints' best part of their team is the defensive line. So let's give the Saints full credit. This is what they do. If you go back and look at their team, they defend up front. Their front is solid. So without Biotish, it kind of got a little shaky, and then they started sitting more blitzes, and Jayden did what he needed to do in protecting the ball. So now he took some sacks he shouldn't have, but he never put the ball in danger. And I think the team will always take the sacks and not putting the ball in danger versus maybe putting the ball in danger and something else happens and trusting your defense. So I like a lot of that went together. And you saw Cliff try to adjust. That's why they went a lot of those outside runs, those kind of sweeps to try to get to the edge because they couldn't contain the middle. And that's not a knock on Dieter. When you find out 3 hours before a game you're starting versus I've ran this all week and I'm starting, two different things. So I think he did a decent job in there, but I think that just affected a lot of different things. And Cliff was trying to change stuff on the fly, which you can kind of see there. That's why the offense was a tad bit off today.
I agree with you. Now we are joined by our co-host, Mr. Michael Hall. Do you have a question for Felix, brother?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Dan Quinn has been preaching like culture, obviously, and competitiveness and whatnot. And I think for the most part they've adapted that. But my question is, when are they going to adapt that killer mentality when you have a team on the brink of putting them out of the game, put your proverbial foot on their neck type of thing? Because he keeps coming up there and saying like blah 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 about competitiveness, and like I said, I get that, but again, my thing is going back even to like the Steelers game. It's been like it's just you have a 10-point lead against the Steelers, you got to kind of put their foot on your neck and end it. Just various games throughout the season is kind of they haven't really kind of adopted that killer mentality yet, and I get it. It's year one, so I'm not really complaining or like killing them for it. I'm just saying like do you think that's like coming down the line? That's like a year two thing, or do you think that's just a product of the NFL and that's how like it's one score games? That's how it just goes.
Well, beating teams are hard in this league. Beating teams by double digits is harder. Um, I I subscribe to what you're saying to a point. They did go for the kill shot. They missed it 3 times.
That's true. Yeah.
They had the kill shot there, and Jayden and Terry were off on the deep shot today. And there's no other way of putting it. But those were your kill shots. They had first one was gorgeous, would have strolled in. The second one was even better. Cliff had countered that zone that the Saints were running, And I mean, Terry would have jogged down the sidelines. I mean, so I think the kill shots were there within reason. Now, I don't think Quinn and maybe Cliff would, but not Quinn would not be as chancy as Dan Campbell. Now, there are levels to we know Dan Campbell's going to go for it. And I honestly believe that's going to cost the Lions in the playoffs because they're going to keep going, and somebody's going to get it right. That's just the law of averages in the NFL.
Right.
So I think they're trying to find that balance. And I think, so they, not pounding on the head, but if you saw what they did in that last drive, they had the ball, they took about 5 minutes off the clock and had a scoring chance. Now they missed the field goal, but you score that, it's a 2-point game, 2-possession game, it's over. Or maybe you punt and pin them down inside the 5 and, make them have to drive the length of the field in under 2 minutes. So I think there's ways of doing it. I don't think they're ever going to be the Dan Campbell, Nick Sirianni's, that type thing. But I think they're going to be more to the left of it. But I think it's also managing what you have now. All right, I have a rookie QB. I'm missing my center. I'd lost my number 2 receiver for the season. So I got Terry. I lost Zach Ertz today. Yep. So now I'm losing a lot of people. How do I want to be aggressive but still make sure I don't give the game away? Because I think giving the game away would have been worse than managing a win, which is obviously what they did today. They managed to win.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Felix. Now, to wrap this up, I only have a couple more questions for you, but this was Marshon Lattimore's debut. And as much as we did not hear his name, that is a great thing. How did you think? I know it's hard just from the TV to be able to say how well he did, but I would have to ask the question.
I think you saw in the defense the change with that lockdown corner. Now there's a corner over here you're not worried about. And what happens is now the safety is not worried about, let me make sure he's okay. Now they're shifting over, and they suffocated the Saints. And Spencer Rattler brought a little bit more because he was more of an NFL quarterback. But even still, they had one good drive. The other drive was either short fields or aided by penalties. So it wasn't like this massive march up and down the field, but you can kind of see it. I think Lattimore is going to show more of his worth next week against the Eagles, who present a bigger challenge for better receivers. But you saw his worth today because it's almost like I'm not worried about that side of the field. And the Saints are also like, he's over there. They attacked to the right or they attacked shallow. And that showed his worth. And if, as a defensive coordinator, if you can not have to worry about a part of the field and attack another area, you start to really put an offense in stress.
You're absolutely right about that. Now, who would you say is the unsung hero of today's game?
It's a very good question. For me, De'Ami Brown, and he did a lot of different things today. He had some runs, he had some tough catches, and for as maligned as he's been, he had some tough. He made some good plays today. He had that one holding call on the outside. I mean, that's kind of a little bit more on Terry, not cutting it inside, but whatever, holding can be called on every play. Right. But I think he played very well today, and for an offense that was searching for, they're looking for a number 2 right now. And sometimes it was the kids, but I think De'Ami Brown played exceptionally well today. It's going to go a little underrated, but I think he did a lot of good things today.
Yeah, and then with the last question I have for you, Jayden Daniels, how did he was doing a fantastic job. The funny thing is that first throw he throws to Terry, that needed the loft on it. That needed the touch. He threw that like a dart, which made it difficult for Terry. So the second time around, he gives a little touch on it, and that gives the ability for the DB to come back to it a little bit. How would you say he did today? Because he finished 25 of 31, 226 yards, 2 touchdowns, and led the team in rushing yards on 11 carries with 66 yards.
I think those 11 and 66 are more important.
Yeah.
Because half of those were designed, but the other ones were him just creating plays. And it could have been 15 sacks, in all sincerity. He got out a lot of stuff, and he showed that ability to do that. So I think Jayden played very well. I'll go back to what I said before. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. Yeah. And I think that is his value, knowing that he is not going to turn the ball over. So you're going to always be playing ahead. So he started off hot, do those things. Yeah, like I said, the timing was off, which I kind of get after a bye week, you get away from each other, then you come back. Terry might be a little bit healthier, so he's a little faster. So I got to get it out there a little bit further. But like you said, the first one needed more air. The second one needed more air. The third one should have been the dart, and it wasn't. So like it was just miscalculation. So I think they got that win. They are healthy, so they'll get it back right. But part of that is just adrenaline because he knows he hits that ball, game's over. And like he did a lot, but that 11 for 66 showed me a lot. Just his elusiveness, his way to cover up way to cover up, some of the deficiencies that the line had today.
Yeah.
So his poise and composure still showed. He never looked rattled. He never looked out of place. He always had that wry smile on his face. So I think Jayden played exceptionally well in a hostile environment. We got to remember the Superdome is not a place where people go and win often. So you have to respect that. No matter what the Saints' record is, they have a very talented defense, and Jayden played well on the road.
And last one, real quick. Which one do you think is going to be the bigger concern for this team overall? Jeremy Chin obviously looked like he got knocked out on that play, and then Zach Ertz dealing with his own concussion as well.
I would lean to Ertz just because of the receiver that safety valve that Jayden has with him, and you need that quality inside receiver to help counter Terry on the outside. I think Chin has played exceptionally well. But I think you saw Defoe come in and play well. And fortunately, it was Defoe on the hit because he hit Valdez Scantling and Chin. But I think the DBs can kind of get away because the safety group is really good. That Chin maybe can come back. But I think Ertz is just because his passing ability. I don't think Sennett or John Bates possess the catching ability anywhere near Zach Ertz. And that's going to be needed in these tougher games, that crossing routes over the middle. You've got to be where you got to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's the scarier one just for the Commanders' sake.
My man. Felix, before you get out of here, I'd like to plug your social media handle.
Yeah, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at bcommander2407 and on Instagram at Blessed Commander.
My man. Felix, enjoy this Sunday. Enjoy the rest of these games. Hopefully the Eagles can catch a loss today. We're praying for it.
It would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Felix, have a good night, brother.
You too.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with the man, Mr. Felix Trammell, to kind of help us with whatever the heck we just witnessed. But Hall, I have to get, what were you feeling when that 2-point conversion popped off?
I mean, honestly, I was feeling they were going to stop it, but there was a part of me that was just like, this is such like a Washington game to lose. Like, we had the lead, a tale of two halves. Again, like I've been saying, one good half, one bad half. Been saying it for years, but I mean, look, they came away at the end. Should have put it away with the field goal. Multiple opportunities missed, multiple penalties. Again, it's kind of what should I say? I guess it's kind of indicative on the coaching staff where they come out against the Cowboys after 10 days of rest. They come out flat, come out and you lose to the Cowboys and all that stuff that went wrong with that game. And then you get a bye week. You come out flat again for the most part with penalties and all the mistakes that were made and whatnot against the Saints.
It's fair.
With some rest. So you can say the coaching staff has – I'm not going to say like fostered like a chill mentality, but Dan Quinn's like a player's like coach, and I feel like a lot of guys were kind of just like, hey, just kind of getting a little bit slow back into the swing of things, but especially with the game flow. But at the end of the day, they won the game. It is what it is. If the Packers end up losing this game to Seattle tonight, we can possibly be in play for the 6th seed. So everything's still in front of us that we want to play for. It's just this is one of them games where it doesn't have you really feeling confident, as confident going forward as far as like, can they really like do what we really want them to do as far as playoffs and maybe even win a playoff game?
Yes. The one thing I do have to we have to say is this isn't like pre-snap penalties that they're getting on. These are
Yeah.
like player penalties, and
Oh yeah.
and
Some of the penalties were bogus, honestly.
some of them were
Like Felix was
ridiculous,
saying. Yeah.
obviously. Like the holding calls and stuff, you can't really put that on the coaching staff. That's just a player just overexerting to try to save something, right? I mean, holding happens nearly on every single play. You've heard
Yeah.
many people talk about that, but I just heard people on Twitter like blaming the coaching staff for this and all this. Look, fact of the matter is, they're playing meaningful games at this moment. They came off the bye, and they're for some reason they're fighting their ass off to stay away from this. But this is one of my issues that I've been talking about, and I said this past episode. My biggest concern, especially defensively, is limiting the big play, is eliminating the bit points off of these kind of plays that happen in a short amount of time. You have to force them to liquidate the clock. And you saw that in that 2 minute where they're just running the ball because we're playing in prevent. Good. Now you're liquidating the clock. Now you're putting yourself in a pressurized situation. But the fact of the matter is, overall, when I went in that 2 point, like as soon as they scored that touchdown, I just like I had a feeling. I walked in my kitchen. I was like, we're gonna win. I just know we're gonna win. They're not gonna get it. And I just had that kind of feeling, but it was definitely nerve wracking. Like I was hyped when it was incomplete just because of the dub. Like I didn't want to go into this Eagles game with this loss looming and literally everyone just going into catastrophe. But it's almost a good thing, in my opinion, because you're heading into Philly knowing that you escaped with the dub. There's so much to work on that when you go into Philly next week, it's not like you can be chill. It's not like you could just chill out and say, hey, we're straight, we're back to it, we're kicking ass. No, like you in the second half tonight, something went terribly wrong. And that's what you kind of have to go back and fix. I almost think it's a good thing for this football team, given the fact that they got the dub, but it almost feels like a loss. And so that way you're much more fine-tuned when you go against Philly. But obviously we've talked about this season. When they have a bad penalty game, the next week they come out really crisp and they do things very well. And that's probably a good recipe going in against Philly. Real quick, the time of possession. Washington dominated the time of possession, 40 minutes and 50 seconds to the Saints 19 minutes and 10 seconds, which just goes to show you how quickly they did score on those short fields and stuff like that, whereas Washington really struggled in just to be able to get points sometimes. But let's make no mistake about it. If they complete those balls to Terry McLaurin, we're not talking so catastrophically. We're not talking about this being such a crappy win and everything like that. Like us as fans need to calm down a little bit. I've seen a little bit too much of that on Twitter. You know what I mean? Like let's calm it down a little bit. The opportunities were obviously there, but let's kind of talk about who's your unsung hero for this game.
Unsung hero. I would say
Don't steal my boy.
I would say Dorrance Armstrong, honestly. Like the defensive line was getting pressure tonight. Uh Louvu was coming with the pressure, Wagner coming on blitzes, Fowler obviously, guys up front, Payne, Newton, all was getting pressure, stopping the run, like multiple tackles for loss. But I feel like a guy like Armstrong, he doesn't really get talked about a lot because he doesn't really make the flashy, like crazy plays. He doesn't really make like the crazy pressure, like I'm always in your face type of plays, but he's kind of like Ryan. He's like the black Ryan Kerrigan. He just shows up, he plays hard, and he gets the sacks that come to him. And he also, every once in a blue moon, will make that ultra athletic play to get into the backfield and get the sack on the quarterback. So I feel like, and then he's great at really setting the run, setting the edge. Had a couple of instances where he bounced it outside to the corner or the safety. They
Right.
came up, filled the gap. So I feel like Dorrance Armstrong is a guy that gets kind of hidden behind Fowler Jr., which obviously he should because he's having a great year. Fowler, Louvu, Payne, guys like that. But Dorrance Armstrong definitely had a hell of a game.
My unsung hero, but first and foremost, my one player I would want to talk about to say they had a really good game today is Daron Payne. Overall, 2 tackles, 1 sack, 1 pass deflection. Obviously, timed it perfectly. Was that Hayner or was Rattler when he was able to swat that
Rattler,
thing?
yeah.
He judged that from the get go. So I think Daron Payne deserves a shout out. But it's Mikey
Did the
Sammerstill.
small things.
5 tackles, 2 passes deflected, and 1 interception for Mikey Sammerstill. Came to play today. He did a great job. Was able to deflect the ball. He should have had 2 interceptions, to be perfectly honest with you. But another guy, Frankie Louvu, hit him square right in the hands. And Dan Quinn and Joe Witt, Joe Witt talked this week about getting more turnovers. The opportunities were again there. They were there, but it's here or there. We got the dub, but those interceptions could really go a mile, right? And I don't want to get on Jayden Daniels too bad, dude. 25 of 31. But those 2 balls to Terry McLaurin, you just want those little small adjustments. But you could see when he makes that adjustment that DB is able to come up and make a play on the ball. And that first one that he threw, it was just a little bit too far out of Terry. Even the one on the sideline. Same thing where he's a sniper, dude. He really is, especially on that sideline. He does a very good job of pinpointing that ball. But sometimes it's just too much on a rope. And you just you kind of give it a little bit of touch there, but still have that drive on it. But give it a little bit of touch to give some wiggle room. You know what I mean? But for the most part, Jayden played his ass off today. Leading the team in runs, of course. Like Cliff sometimes gets me so angry because it seems like it's whenever we have a good run, he just immediately gets back to throwing the football. And especially with the problems that we were having up front, you almost want to say, like, dude, come on, like, I know that we're not running the ball effectively and well, but we can't just allow them to get after Jayden the way he is. Are you concerned about that offensive line and their output today?
Offensive line output, no, I would say, because obviously with Biotis being out, that's a huge piece. Like the literally the anchor in the middle, the centerpiece of everything.
That boy Chase Young got his revenge today. I told you.
I know, yeah,
I
yeah.
told you.
Of course he would go off against us of like, but after like never doing it for us except for his rookie year. But anyway.
But Jayden, do you see Jayden Daniels literally juke Brian Breesy out of his shoes in that touchdown pass? That was beautiful, man.
Yeah. Hell yeah. But now as far as like the offense goes and the run game, I think Biotis being out was definitely a part of it, and like the whole like the inside zone and like just the blocking, the double teams, and all the everything that goes into it. I think that was a little bit off just because, like Felix said, getting the call maybe an hour and a half before the game starts. Hey, you're going to be the guy to go. Da 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 da.
Right.
With Dieter, so that threw things off a little bit. But at the end of the day, like you talked about, I feel like Cliff gets a little bit too pass happy with his quarterback sometime. Like if he sees the running game is not really as effective as he wants it to be, it's not really working, he just shies away from it like no other.
Yep.
But then when he does go back to it, it's like at the wrong times and stuff goes wrong. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's one of them games. It's almost like we kind of got on Ron Rivera about like, why are you tempering the offensive coordinators? You need da 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 da. But in reality, it was kind of like once Ron told Scott, whoever it might be, hey, except for Eric Bieniemy, run the ball. Let's focus on the run game. Let's get back to our roots and work off of that. The offense kind of like percolated and kind of got going. So I feel like I'm not saying Dan Quinn needs to pull a Ron Rivera and like go to Cliff Kingsbury and say, hey, let's get back to our roots and run the ball, da da da. But I feel like Dan needs to be like, hey, we talk about our toughness, our competitiveness. Like, let's get back to our toughness, competitiveness. Let's stick to the run game. Let's stick to feeding B-Rob. Let's stick to the exotic run game, if you want to call it that, as far as like all the pulling schemes, all the gap schemes, all the zone schemes. Let's get B-Rob a little bit more involved, a little bit more often, as far as like, okay, he had a 9, like you said, he had a 7 or 8 yard run. Keep feeding him, keep feeding him, keep feeding him. And it was more of like 7, 8 yard run. Okay, back to Jayden Daniels passing the ball. Back to Jayden Daniels running the ball. And I also feel like maybe I need to watch like the all 22 somehow and see what was going on. But I feel like a lot of people talked about the predictiveness of like the concepts and the routes or whatnot. And I feel like a lot of it was almost like week 1 where Jayden Daniels was like dropping back, looking, scanning, didn't see anything run. He had 11 runs, but I feel like 5 or 6, 7 of those were scrambles and kind of just get out the pocket, whatever, da da da. But at the end of the day, I feel like definitely Cliff was still in his bag. He still called a pretty decent game. I just feel like he needs to get back to the essence and the roots of the run game, and maybe that starts with Tyler Biotis being in the center and the anchor, being out there.
Absolutely, it was. And I will say this: Jaden Daniels in that pocket today at certain times, he was like my son when I'm trying to get him changed. Sometimes, just being able to wiggle out of it,
Bro,
like you know what I'm saying?
going through that right now. It's crazy. It's just all the wiggling. It's just like, come on, just keep your foot still for a second.
Right.
It's just like, ah.
Hey, just wait till they get older, dude. It gets even worse. As soon as they can start running, they'll do it. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And it's amazing what he did do. And the funny thing is, when he does keep his eyes downfield, you see what he does with that Terry McLaurin touchdown. Beautiful things happen. There are other times where he tries to make it happen. Obviously, goes out wide. You want him to be able to throw that ball away, but but his running ability really is such a difference maker on some of these downs. That one run he had on like 3rd and 14, where
Yeah,
he's just
catch
able,
16.
just squeeze everything through. But there's also times where he depends on it too much, where it leads to a sack. And so it's almost like a damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of thing with Jaden. But ultimately, it came down to the offensive line not having the production they needed. And I don't want to get on Cliff too hard, but it's like I was saying, run the ball more. And then in the second half, we try to run the ball out of shotgun, and we're getting negative yardage. I'm like, stop out of shotgun. Like, I can imagine hearing Doc Walker say, power football, power football. You know what I'm saying? And it almost seemed like we just got to, like, obviously they were trying to make something work because they gave B-Rob 21 carries, but it only gave up 65 yards. And so credit to the Saints up front. John Ridgeway and company did a very good job. Chase Young really did well at setting the edges. He was fantastic at that. We would try to bump it outside, and that would get nulled up really quickly. So a lot of credit to that young man and the Saints defense overall. But this is the sort of thing where you want to bring that aggressiveness back to the offensive line. And I know that Tyler Badass was that, but you can't hinge on that. That needs to be your identity. That's what you need to build up. And that's what kind of my point was, is that if you're going against a good run defensive team, it almost seems like we struggle with being able to run the football in a strong, aggressive sense against a good front like that, like the Steelers, like the Eagles. And that's what my kind of concern is. You have to implement that and have something for it. It almost seems like we try to do too much at times and get sweet with it. You know what I mean? But
That's kind of what I was like saying with my question with Felix, where it's like not as far as like I know he can like Dan Quinn like preaches like toughness and competitiveness and that. I'm not ever questioning that because like they definitely do that, but it's like at some point it's like the toughness involves and kind of encapsulates.
encapsulates.
Sorry, encapsulates. Yeah, it encapsulates putting your foot. I said it wrong again. Putting your
It's
foot
all
on
good.
their neck and finishing the game.
Yeah.
Like they finished the game today, obviously, but I'm saying like when you have those leads, when you have those opportunities, you got to capitalize on those. And I know it's a young team, it's a young cultivating type of situation from top to bottom, and I know they'll get there eventually. But at the same time, it's like the Steelers game, like multiple games throughout the season where it's like the games got closer where they should have been, they
Yeah.
shouldn't have been, and there was multiple opportunities where it's like, okay, put a game out of reach. Nope. Put it out of reach. Nope. Put it out of reach. Okay, you got to drive. Here comes a field goal. And I know the kicker situation has been ridiculous this season too, but like get to that point, it's like put it out of reach with a field goal, miss, block. It's just like those little small things where it's like I know they'll eventually it'll come, but it's just like in a season like this where it's like everything's just going so great for us, so special. It's like those small little kind of it's just like that'll put us over the top. But I know we'll get there eventually.
Yes, and to your point, what really encapsulates the issue is that 3rd and 1 on the goal line, where
That's
you
just
want to feed like you want to have that aggressiveness, that toughness to say we're giving this to B-Rob, and you're not going to stop it. But the issue being is the lack of confidence up front, and that identity of having that aggressive and toughness is why you do the play action pullout. And honestly, nobody on defense was fooled by it. Every single DB, there was 2 guys on Luke McCaffrey escaping. I think it was Cam Jordan on the outside that read it perfectly. He walked right into Jayden
Multiple
Daniels.
times read it perfectly.
Right. And so, like, that's the sort of thing with me. It's like, no, dude, let's put John Bates at fullback and let him clear the damn way for you. Let's get these 6 points. And that's, like, I think ultimately the difference is, like, where Philly can do the stupid tush push, but like we struggle just picking up that 1 yard when we truly need it. And that's the kind of toughness and aggressiveness I'm kind of talking about with like that run game. And that's what I feel
But
like we're ultimately missing.
I feel like you said, it goes towards the confidence of, okay, I
Yeah.
have confidence of my offensive line, and I have confidence in Jalen Hurts be able to push forward
Yeah.
for a yard or 2 yards, whatever it might be. I don't think Cliff has that confidence of being like, or he gets in his head too much of being like, I gotta.
Well, and to be
They're gonna
honest,
think I'm
that's not really his identity, right? This never power game has never truly. I
kind of,
know,
sort of, but yeah.
you know
At
what I
the end
mean,
of the
though.
day, I feel like sometimes Cliff gets in his head of like, they think I'm gonna do this, so let me counter it with this. When it's like, no, 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 they think they're gonna do this, but guess what? Let them think they're gonna do this. Like, you, to your point, let them think that, but do it anyway. Like, you can't stop us, type of mentality.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you. Now the question, let's get into questions before we get too carried away. The question about the Colonel. We're clearly snake bitten at kicker this year. What are our options if we're to make a serious run in the playoffs at kicker?
hope that Cyber gets back healthy off of IR and gets back to the not only the physical but the mental aspect of his season for the up to the point of the Dallas game where he was 19 of like 20, 21, and he was like having like a really, like I said, physical and mental great kind of Justin Tucker esque type of year, whereas opposed to every other kicker, as opposed to Seibert has kind of had a Justin Tucker esque this year type of season where it's like they got the yips, they miss one from 35, but they make one from 54. They miss one from 53 and make one from 47. It's like too much roller coaster. So I would say it would take Cyber coming back and being mentally and physically healthy enough to get back to what he was doing before the injuries.
Well, first and foremost, they got to shore up those snaps. Some of the snaps
Yeah,
coming back on the
that's
field
it.
goal attempts are delayed because it all is
Yeah,
based off timing, right? And obviously, Craig Joseph just got here this week. It was because of the injury to Zane Gonzalez. He obviously got nicked up when he was making his hair look good. But like to make a serious run of the playoffs, you just got to make your kicks. And essentially, it's on the offense to be able to get the ball close enough to where it's not that big of a concern. And obviously, you could bring up the Austin Seibert missed extra point and everything like that. But the fact is, the offense, if you're scoring 6, it's not a concern. And yes, of course, you want your kicker, you want to be confident in your kicker, but there's not many teams in this league right now that are very confident in their kicker. And to be honest, to make a run in the playoffs, I'm much more hell bent on being able to run the ball effectively as an offense, much more so than I am about the kicker. That is a huge concern for me, Colonel. Which thank you for this, by the way. I was not supposed to.
as on it's fresh.
I was not supposed to open it last night, but I saw it out front, and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" I opened it up. I pulled it out. I was like, "Oh, snap!" Katie yelled at me about it. Which it's our anniversary today, so happy anniversary to us, of
Happy
course.
anniversary to you and Cody.
Thank you, thank you. But I'll say that with the kicker issue, I've said this many times, guys, especially as a fan base. The grass ain't always greener on the other side. You complain about Seibert, we go get Gonzalez. Gonzalez kind of botches a couple against Tennessee, right? Then comes out injured this week. We got to sign Greg Joseph. He kind of shit up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to remember, the grass ain't always green on the other side. It seems like every single kicker has these sort of stuff going on. Just ask the Minnesota Vikings about their history with kickers, even though how great they've been. And so you kind of got to just take in consideration that yes, you want to get better at every position, but the fact is you want to get these yips out now. All right, because if we do make the playoffs, you don't want it to come up and then. I don't want that
When
sort of
we make
rearing
the
its ugly head.
playoffs, not if.
Yeah, and to be honest here, you should not be ending that football game against the Saints only scoring 3 points in the third and fourth quarter. That's not how you win football games in this league. And obviously they had their chances. They had them with Terry McLaurin, which I credit to Cliff for calling those plays because that was awesome. It was good to see
Yeah,
that.
no, like Felix said, the shots were there.
Yep, they absolutely were. But it's just the one thing is you don't want to have to depend on that passing game in order to extend drives. That's where the running game goes in. But obviously there's a lot go into that. And I don't want to blame it all on Dieter. It's not. It's an entire offensive line. Brandon Coleman had his lunch eaten today. I was wondering myself, I was even going to ask Felix this. I was like, where was Cornelius Lucas? You know what I mean? And like, maybe he did play. Maybe I just didn't notice him at all, whatever have you. But it definitely seemed like I didn't see him at all. Now, the next question from the Colonel Even after our bye week, the penalties, mistakes, overthrows, missed interceptions were frequent today. Are we playing championship caliber football? Please comment on things we need to straighten out if we hope to win a playoff game.
Yeah, definitely not playing a championship caliber football. I would say obviously they're playing winning enough football against the bad teams, but you play teams that are playoff caliber teams, like, again, obviously, like at this point, we're going up against either Detroit or Philly, depending on who gets the 1 or 2 seed. And playing like that, you're not going to beat those type of teams where
Even if we
they're
get
all
the
about,
6th seed, we could be possibly playing against Seattle, who has Leonard Williams up front, who's
yeah.
playing like one of the best defensive tackles in the league right now.
Not even just that, they love to have the run game with Zach Charbonnet
Yeah.
and Kenneth Walker. Or if the Rams end up winning the West, you got to go against Puka Nakua and Cooper Cup on top of a guy like Kyron Williams, who is
Right.
way, way, way underrated as far as like running backs go in the National Football League. So I feel like, yeah, they got to tighten up on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, Kamara went out today, and then Miller came in the game. It was busting off kind of big gap runs and big gains here and there. But yeah, it goes back to last week what we were talking about, where the last podcast, where if they want to actually compete with the big boys and like be a contender in the playoffs, you got to be able to stop the run at a top 5 level. Philly, Detroit, even Seattle, like we just talked about, LA Rams, even Bijan Robinson with the Falcons. These are teams that are going to depend on the run game to get their offense generated. And if you can't stop the run, it's going to be curtains for you.
I will say this. I disagree. I think we do a very good job of nullifying the runs. It's just when we're in prevent, which is what was happening earlier in the season, that's when the rushing yards really started piling up, right? My big issue is closing these teams out and not allowing big plays to allow them to get back into things. That is my one MO. That's one issue that I do have, is that we allow them very easy points to come back in it. Obviously, the Alvin Kamara pass, that's a trick play. Credit to them. My whole thing is running the football effectively, especially up front, has been an issue against good teams all year long. And that if you're really going to be that, I'm not going to say that this was a championship caliber effort. It wasn't at all, if we're being honest with you, defensively or offensively. But they were able to get the dub, which is great today. But when we get to the playoffs, what's really going to matter is if you can liquidate the clock. If you can keep the offense for Detroit off the field like you did today against the Saints, where you had 40 minutes of time possession, they only had 19. That's cooking with gas, man, especially against a team like Detroit that leans heavily on their offense. If you're able to keep them off, but you can limit the big plays, now you're really in a very good position. But that's ultimately where it comes down to running the football effectively, being able to score points when you can, and being able to get escape out of there with a W. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. And then the third thing is turnovers. Frankie Louisville again today. They had other opportunities that they could have really had a chance to make a play on the ball. But that turnovers and actually being able to run the ball effectively is what the huge difference is going to be in the playoffs. And look, I understand what you're saying about run defense, of course. I just think it's much more situational that they're getting beat up with, whereas we're dedicating that extra guy in the back end and they're getting those extra yardage, but you want them to liquidate that clock. If we're talking at the beginning of the game, they kind of did a good job against it. It was much more of Kamara being motioning out wide with the passes that really bled them out. They did a good job against the run, first and foremost. It wasn't until we left a guy out of there that they were able to get some more yardage. You know what I mean? But
Yeah, but I would also say it always goes back to it's an offensive league and an offensive game because
Yep.
to your point, yes, it was like stupid mistakes here and there and like trick plays with them and whatever, but it was still the offensive penalties. It was still the nullifying of the drives on offense where it's like in order to put a team out of reach, when you get into that red zone, when you get into like the drives where you're getting 6, 7, 8 plays generating, but then you get a penalty here and there, which kills it. Those are the type of moments where it's like the offense needs to capitalize on those moments and put the teams out of reach because, again, at the end of the day, a game like this, yes, you're right. Defense grinded it out, made the stops here and there.
They
Kind of
held
was
them to
bent.
they held them to 3 of 11 on third
Yeah, as
downs.
I'm saying, it was a bend don't break type of mentality
Yeah.
today. But against those teams that are the upper echelon because they're in the playoff type of teams. Those are the teams that are going to put points on the board. They're not going to.
Right.
They're not going to be the Saints where it's like we're going to miss out on mistakes and opportunities. A guy like Matt Stafford, a guy like, I mean, you can say what you want about Kirk Cousins, but he puts points on the board when he needs to. A guy like Geno Smith, obviously, puts points on the board. So the offense needs to kind of get back to generating points, putting up the points, and stop having the penalties that kill the drives.
Yeah, and my whole point here is that these teams like Detroit, these teams like the Rams, the Seahawks, like you said, they have the weapons outside. If you're able to limit the big play, if you're able to control time of possession, run the ball well, if you stop those big plays from happening and lead to quick scores, that's when you're really putting yourself in a very good position. If the big play is continuously an issue for you to limit, that's when they come back. And that's what we've seen time and time again this season, where we're allowing these big plays. And please, for the love of God, Benjamin St. Juice, get your damn hands down, man. What are you doing? Why? Like, why, dude?
The thing is about St. Juice, it's like he'll make a couple plays here and there where it's like, you know what, maybe I was being too hard on the guy. Like, he's not that bad. And then he gets a play like today where it's like you had a handful of plays, and the one play where it matters, you messed up.
Now,
like,
we won, okay? Fact of the matter is, Washington is now 9-5. The Washington PR department just tweeted out, this is the best start through 14 games for a Washington team since 1992. That is depressing. That's depressing. Depressing just overall, given our history. And it's
depressing.
Awesome for this coaching staff and Adam Peters' company and Jayden Daniels and the entire team, what they've been able to do. I know that we're coming off as very harsh, very critical, as we all are. You don't want to be okay with the kind of output that went today. But the grand scheme of things, what an amazing job it has been, just overall looking at it. Yeah. And it's amazing that we're sitting here being critical in their first year, given with all the injuries that they did have today and everything like that. It's awesome where we are. Like, nobody's even brought up Austin Eckler and how important he was to this offense, and missing Noah Brown, and they were still able to kind of produce what they did. Obviously, it should have been much different. We should have. My prediction was 31-10, and I thought that game was shaping out the right way for that. It's just, allowing teams back in it.
Look, honestly, I was like, 31-13, something like that, and we both said it's almost the same thing. To your point, and to Felix's point, and the overall point of this game, it was just a tad bit off, but the shots were there, the points were there. It was just about, again, closing the games out, putting the teams out of reach that you should put out of reach, not letting them hang around.
Yeah, and we were 9 of 17 on third down. A lot of those failed third downs happened in the second half when we were put in long situations. You can't depend on Jayden escaping upfield to be able to get you first downs every time. People are going to quarterback spy on him, and that's the thing you have to take in consideration. He was a sniper today, man. Last question from the Colonel. Did Marshon Lattimore make any noticeable difference in this game? He says Chase Young certainly did with 2 sacks and a couple pressures.
I would say it noticeable, no, because you did not see them target Marshon Lattimore one time. You did not hear them say Marshon Lattimore's name one time unless it was talking about the trade, talking about him being an ex-Saint, or them showing the stats where it said 0 targets, 0 whatever yards or whatever it might be. So I would say, yes, he made a difference because although they didn't have a legit number one receiver, he made a difference because you heard Mikey Samuel's name called. He made an interception, but he also got beat a couple times. You heard St. Juice's name be called because he made the penalty. You heard Noah I's name called a couple times because whatever it may be. You ain't never hear Marshon Lattimore's name called because they said, "Oh, Marquez Valdez-Scantling with an out route for 5-7 yards," or that's how bad it is. I can't even name another Saints wide receiver that was on the field today. Pettis, yeah, Pettis had actually a decent game, but you never see Pettis with the deep route against Marshon Lattimore. Like, no.
Yeah,
he had a big impact on the game, and I feel like he had a big impact because they were able to stack the box a little bit more, which also held Kamara in check for the most part before he got with the injury.
The noticeable difference is that he wasn't noticed And
Yep.
if you have BSJ out there, you know he's going to be noticed. We saw in that one play where he's in there, it's a flag, and it's just poetic in that sense. No reason to beat up on the Canadian, but it's just that kind of thing where the fact
Buddy.
that the fact that he didn't get targeted kind of tells you how they feel about him. I do think that Philly is going to stress that. I feel
Oh
like
yeah.
Philly is going to press on that matter to say, is he really him? And so we're gonna see next week how good Marshon Lattimore is. But his impact was immense. You saw that from the get go, allowed Mikey Samerstill to really showcase himself. And that's the whole point about Marshon Lattimore, is that teams are going to kind of shy away from him a little bit. Now, the next question that we have, this is in the Discord. This is from Deluxe. How does it feel to be 9-5?
I mean, it feels great. I haven't felt this pretty much my entire life, honestly. Like that I can really think of at the top of my head. Like, I mean, obviously, I was born like in '87, so like I was alive for the '91 season, but like I don't really remember anything about that season because I was 4 years old, just turned 4 years old because my birthday is in December. So Super Bowl's in '92. So I literally just turned 4 at that point. So I don't remember nothing about that. And on top of that, I mean, the '99 season was pretty good. I mean, that was a really good team, and we know what had happened after that. And I would say 2015, I went to a couple games that season. Had a couple blowout wins that I went to with the Packers game, Sunday Night Football. But yeah, I mean, 9-5, like we're in the mix. I'm hoping that Seattle does us a favor tonight and gets on Jordan Love and the Packers' ass, and hopefully pull out a dub. But at the end of the day, all I can be happy about is it's a winning season for the first time in a couple years. Playoffs are looking like they're on the horizon, and I would say that it's only year one, so it's only gonna get better. So I'm definitely excited.
Yeah, it's refreshing. It makes you really excited for what the future holds, especially for this football team if we can retain Cliff in the future. But given all the stuff happening that they just got together in one offseason, they were able to come through at 9-5. You can talk about the strength of schedule, the teams that they've won against and lost against. Fact is, this team, as much as you want to be happy about the 9-5, you still are reluctant in that kind of confidence to say that they can play with anybody because they still have a way to go. But just goes to show you how far they have truly come and what they have in store, what they have possible at their hand. So honestly, it's reassuring and it's freaking awesome to experience it. It's not like 2012 where you won 7 games to get into the playoffs. Like it's like very much they're in their destiny is in their own hands, and that
Yeah.
is something we're not typically used to. And it's surreal. It seems like almost like a dream. But this is where we're at, and that's why I wanted to say we kind of have to take a step back and like think about this in the grand view of things. Is that they're off to one heck of a start, man. They have a lot to fix, of course, but just going to show you that we've seen a much worse with more years under their belt going into something. Now the next question we have is from Tim Towner. We just won our 9th game. I can't believe it. We're gonna have a winning record. What was your preseason projection for total wins, and how many do you think we'll end up with now?
I want to say my projection was if everything broke right, everything went right, Jaden Daniels was who we thought he was, which it turns out he is exactly who I thought he was going to be
I think you
for the
said
most
eight.
part.
I think you said 8 wins realistically, but you
Yeah,
also gave the
I
caveat.
said anywhere between 8 to 10 wins. And I said realistically like 8 to 9, depending on like everything broke right. Here we are, 9 wins with Philly, and 4 games ago, 3 games ago, whatever it is. And I feel like, yeah, it's been everything I thought it was going to be for the most part. Obviously, they definitely beat a couple teams like Cincinnati and a couple teams here and there that Leo thought that they were not going to beat. But I would say that they're at 9 wins now, and they can definitely get to 9-5. They got 3 games. Philly, what is it? Philly, Atlanta, and Dallas, right?
Yeah.
I can say they can get to 11 wins. They can get to 11-6, and that would be a hell of a successful season. First time in my entire lifetime going back to, again, not my entire lifetime, but since I've actually like been able to remember and like recollect football, Since '91, they've won 11 games. Never in my lifetime have I witnessed that. I would love to see that. It's definitely on the table.
Honestly, in the preseason, I was very against putting any projections out there. I thought projections were very funny, just given the fact that you have no idea how things are going to shape out. But I did put the caveat in there. I don't want to discount them and say that they don't catch fire, that they don't come out and be able to do things that nobody has seen before. And they obviously certainly have done that. And so I didn't want to take 10 games out of the equation. I thought that was very much possible if they did catch fire. That being said, I'm very surprised by how far they have come in such a short amount of time where things could have gone off the rails, but they haven't. They've kept things tight. And that's the one thing here that I don't want to discount for what this football team has done and how far they have come. I appreciate the heck out of those Island of Misfit Toys because they're playing their ass off right now. It's just they got to find a recipe to close out some of these games and make you reassure you like with confidence that they're not going to allow somebody to get back in it because the teams we're going against are good, of course, but so are we in a sense. And we could complain about number 2 wide receiver, all that other jazz. I don't believe any of it. I think that we have what we need. It's just we have to find the concoction to make that work, right? We just got to make sure we're mixing and making sure that we're finding the right recipe to make things happen.
Number 5 is the recipe. Whenever he's on and he's doing right and going right, we have a chance against almost anybody.
Yep, and that's what it comes down to. And ultimately, I said that going back to May, but we'll need to get into that. Now, the next question from Andy Lockhart. Why did we go conservative in the play calling on offense besides 3 deep shots? 2 to Terry and 1 to Diami that was brought back for a penalty.
Yeah, you could say they were going conservative, but I mean, I feel like that's like the MO of like defensive coaches, head coaches, play the run game, play the clock, like bleed the clock out, play conservative and kind of get away with a win. But again, to everyone's point earlier and what we talked about, the plays were there, the shots were there. They could have put the game out of reach multiple times. It just didn't happen. So I don't have really a problem with it with that much. The only thing I have a problem with was, like we talked about earlier, where they didn't really, even though Brian Robinson got 21 rushes, it wasn't like, I feel like it wasn't a consistent 21 rushes where it was like we talked about, oh, he got 7, he got 8. Okay, go back to him again. It was like he got 7, he got 8. Let's throw a screen. Let's do a drop back pass. Or it was like, oh, he got a screen pass. He broke a couple tackles here and there. And then it was like, go back to Jayden Daniels in the offense again. So I feel like Cliff will hopefully get back to Brian Robinson in the run game consistently as far as when he's hot, keep feeding him.
Yeah, I have to disagree. I don't think that Cliff was conservative. They threw the ball 31 times. Obviously, Brian Robinson had 21 carries. They wanted to be able to liquidate the clock, but it was hard to do that when you're not getting great yardage and you're putting yourself in bad situations in these 2nd and 11s, 3rd and 14s that they continuously were put in because of either a penalty or the run play got blown up. And we can go into the type of run play that it's called. But honestly, I don't think it was conservative. They did a very good job of stressing it and continuing to throw the ball down the field. It's just much more so about being smart about it because you don't want to turn the football over and give them more momentum and a short field to come back. And then we can't even say that they were conservative in the sense that Dan Quinn went for that field goal. You know what I mean? With that 54-yard field goal. Conservative, you could say he would punt it there. And that was probably the best option for you. But Dan Quinn wanted the win. He was going for the win. And that's what he wanted. But unfortunately, we shouldn't be depending on that. We should be able to get down the field and do these things. But stuff happens. So I'm not going to say they were conservative because they certainly pressed the issue. It's just they missed them. They missed the opportunities. And that's what has to get shorn up for a young team to really take the next step. And like we've talked about, putting their foot on their throat and telling them, you're not going anywhere. We're digging this ditch for you, and you're going to sit there. So that's the one thing that they have to obviously get better at. And they will. In due time, it's just we're running out of it this season. And as much as you'd love to have them fix it right away, that's something that's kind of matured into and developed and understood, if that makes sense. And so that's where we have to get into. Now, the next question we have is from Tim Towner, last one. Cliff Kingsbury reminds me of Joe Gibbs with regard to the deep ball by rarely taking shots downfield, and when they did, they were thought out to set up the defense. But do you think that the infrequency of those throws is calling JD's completion percentage to suffer? I don't think so. I mean, his completion percentage was very good today. 25 of 31. I think that they stressed it downfield when they needed to. It's just they don't want to turn the football over, and they know the importance of that. And I give them credit for it because it's been the MO all season long.
Yeah, I don't think he's like making it go down. I think that coming into the draft, that was like what he excelled in. That's what he did in college. The deep ball, what he excelled in, and I think that we've seen him hit it and connect on it multiple times this season. Terry McLaurin has double-digit touchdowns for the first time in his career. So I mean, like the deep ball is definitely there. I just think that it's just one of them things where it's been up and down this little bit this season, but for the most part, it's been up. And I think that again, like we just talked about, maybe it had to do with the week off, the little bit out of rhythm, but there was multiple shots down the field. There was multiple times where the goal ball was there, the shot was there, just didn't connect on it. So I feel like going forward, if they connect on it, we're having a totally different conversation.
Yeah, and what Terry McLaurin now has 10 or 11 touchdowns this season, which
I believe it's 10, but it might be 11.
credit to my
Lost
boy
count
right.
because he's just doing his thing.
He's elite, baby. What I've been trying to tell everybody. All right. We'll see you guys again on Wednesday. Have a great night. If you made it this far, you're a freaking champion. If you're watching this, you're a champion. Go about your day. Enjoy your day. And it doesn't look like the Eagles are going to be losing this one. They're up 17-3 on the Steelers, of course, because, when we depend on the Steelers to do us a solid, they just can't do it. It's typical Pittsburgh. All right, everybody. We'll see you again on Wednesday. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
And we'll see you then. Washington football. Woo!
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.